telling people that I think my grandma's backyard is haunted because I'm seeing some weird stuff there. At this point, I'd actually had a room built onto my grandma's house because I was staying there for a long time. I love my grandparents. They're all passed away now, but it was a really good time living there. But, so, I brought over a bunch of friends, and I was with my buddy Josh and my friend Jackie and a couple other people. And we were all like, oh yeah, we're gonna go ghost hunting, but let's start off at Jason's grandma's house because that place is totally creepy. And Jackie's 12, by the way, and I would have been, at this point in time, 1997, would have been about 19, 20, something around there. Josh was about the same age. So we're just all young kids, and then we got like this little girl hanging out with us. It was Josh's sister. So we go there, and everyone hangs back, because it was a really creepy house. Everyone hangs back but me and Jackie. And I saw one of the shadow people standing in the doorway between the garage and the backyard. And I had a really weird visual that time. It was nighttime, of course. That's when you go ghost hunting with your friends. And the shadow man is standing there at night. And I look at him. And these things are like 7-8 feet tall. And what I perceived, like looking at him, it seemed like it was daytime on the other side of him. Now, beyond his actual outline of his form, it was nighttime, but I had this weird sensation that it was daytime behind him or through him. There were two other shadow men standing in the back of this backyard at night. And it would have been fall. It was a little cold. Now, I told you my rule about not explaining stuff, but this was a time I didn't have that rule perfected. And me and Jackie walk up to the doorway. And Jackie says something to the effect that I'm really creeped out. And I said, there's one in front, because I told them, again, I wasn't 100% on my plan, but I will get to that in a second. I told him, I said, yeah, I think there's these shadow people walking in my backyard. I don't know how to explain them. They're just these big shadows walking around. I tell Jackie, I go, yeah, there's one in front of us right now. Now, her being a 12-year-old girl, not really thinking about anything, she sticks her hand right through the thing's chest. Now, of course, she doesn't see anything. To her, she's just sticking her hand through a doorway into the dark backyard. And what I see is her hand, where his chest should be, or his stomach, because she's quite short. And she goes, it's warm. My hand's warm here. Now, I didn't tell her, oh, it looks like daytime in him. But she was feeling warmth where her hand was there. Now, I'm not going to let a 12-year-old girl be more brave than I am, so I put my hand into him as well. And it was warm. And I start to say something to her, and my hand is just where both of our hands are just sticking halfway through a doorway. Anyone walking by would just see two people sticking their hands through a doorway into the backyard at night. I say something to her, and I look over at her, and then I start to turn my hand, because I'm kind of almost feeling the temperature. And now my hand is basically, the back of my hand is facing me completely. All 5 fingers I'm looking at all 5 fingers. But the thing is, my pinky and what is that? My other index finger, the finger next to the pinky, they're gone. They're completely gone. All I see is my thumb, my ring, and my middle finger. And then it's almost like just my hand was the other 2 fingers and that part of my hand were completely gone, enveloped in darkness. They didn't exist anymore. It wasn't a trick of the light, it was gone. And this is when I used my plan. I'm looking at my hand and it's flat out. And I go, Jackie, do you see something weird? And she looks over and she goes, your fingers are missing. We both pull our hands out. We run back to the car. And that wasn't the last time I saw the shadow people. It was the last time I interacted with them on that way. I never tried to communicate with them, never tried to do a seance or Ouija board or anything like that. To me, those things don't seem like they would work. because these things didn't necessarily seem like ghosts, but I don't know what they were. It's been a long, long time since I've seen a shadow man, or one of those shadow dogs, or the boy. But one of the... I remember I was driving home late at night, just driving through Orangevale. It's maybe like 2 in the morning. I always stayed up late, and they were everywhere. I just saw 2 walking down the block here, a dog walking across the street, flat, but moving somehow. Sometimes they moved in pairs, sometimes alone, but I saw them everywhere that night. I didn't sleep that night either. True story. Totally true story. DeadRabbitRadio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at Facebook.com/DeadRabbitRadio. If I see one of those things tonight, dude. Twitter is @JasonLCarpenter. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal conspiracy and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm glad you listened to it today. Have a great weekend, guys, and we will be back Monday. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio Classics, where we listen to an older episode with a new introduction. This episode actually doesn't need much of an introduction. When I first before I started doing the show, whenever I talked about paranormal encounters that I had, these are kind of the stories I would start off with. Because when we look at ghost hunting, a lot of times we base it on stuff we see in television or stuff we've read in books. But what the first story is about a guy with some workplace violence, a man with a sword. I have nothing to do with that story, although I thought that segment was really interesting too. But the 2 follow-up stories, my 2 paranormal encounters, they're not things that you think would happen if you're hunting ghosts. They're not things that I thought were possible. And they are bone-chilling. The implications of these stories, which they happened to me. You can believe me, you cannot believe me, you can think I was mistaken, I could have been mistaken. All of those things are possible. But I experienced them, and I believe them to be true. And these stories are chilling. Because it totally shakes up the game, and actually it doesn't only shake up the game for ghost hunters or paranormal investigators, it changes the game for you tonight in your home. Because if it is possible for ghosts, spirits, or demons to do to you what happened to me in these following stories, well, you can imagine what the results would be. So let's go ahead and get started with this episode of Dead Rabbit Radio Classics. Episode 124. No one can hear you scream. A dispute at a workplace becomes a close encounter of the sword kind. And then I'm going to share some personal stories I have that involve ghosts and the ability to both mimic a human voice and to make your screams silent today on Dead Rabbit Radio. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Jason Carpenter. I'm having a great day. I hope you're having a great day too. You know what Tesla should have invented? I wonder if these exist, but a quiet heater. Most heaters are quite noisy. I'm saying this because I'm freezing right now. It is super cold here. I think it's probably about 35, 34 degrees this night. I can't run my heater because I'm recording. And also, I did have another story planned for tonight. That was a story that's been on the conspiracy iceberg for a while. I'm not going to reveal what it is just yet, But what happened was I had just... I'll reveal it. So Monday's episode, we're going to do the Paleolithic Deep State. Do cavemen secretly run the world? And the story was prepped, it was ready to go, because the reason why I'm saying this, I try to do 2 conspiracy iceberg stories a week. That's kind of been my setup, minimum 1. But, so that one I had ready to go, and I knew what I was going to talk about, and I came across some brand new information on it that gave me a whole new angle to go on the story, so we're going to wait a little bit for that. And so because of that, I'm going to talk about one of my personal experiences. We'll get to that in a second. I tend not to like to talk about my personal experiences, not because I'm shy or anything, but because there's nothing I can really link to that. I'll see if I can try to find some articles that relate to this experience, but I always try to give you stories that I can provide backup for. But we've done stuff. The Stanley Hotel episode was mostly based on my experiences, and then the Shadow People invasion. But even those had some links, so we'll see. The ghost stories I'm going to tell you are quite odd. Okay, I wanted to tell this story real quick. It's from New News, and we're traveling again back to the year 2004. And this is a short one. It's such a bizarre story. We're in 2004. We're in the United States. And we're in a company called Peerless Steel Corporation. They make bolts and stuff. Actually, they don't. I just re-looked at my notes. They make metal powder for brakes. So they don't make bolts. But anyway, they make just like giant Frankenstein bolts. And there was this guy who's at work. He got picked on all the time. By one guy in particular was always picking on him. And I thought it was a little ironic that the company was named Peerless and this guy had no peers. But anyway, so he's sitting at work and he's like, he might have been humming a copyright song, but I don't know. I'm going to use a non-copyrighted song. And he's humming and he's sharpening it. He's hit or miss. I bet you never miss, huh? The song came out like 14 years later. But anyways, he's working on something, and people are kind of like, "Hey, dude, what are you working on?" And he's like, I'm building a sword." And people are like, "What?" And you know, it's a metalwork company. People are probably always building weird stuff. We used to build baseball bats in wood shop in high school. They don't allow you to do that anymore. You never miss, huh? We got a boy. He's sharpening, making the sword. After a couple days, and no one really thought anything of it. After a couple days, he must have just been like, oh, holds the sword up, and then goes, "Everyone leave, except for you, bully." And everyone's like, and you know, the thing is that at any point they could have said, "Dude, stop making a sword at work. Do it on your own time, and then leave it at home." But anyways, he's like, "Everyone just go home. I have business with this guy." And the other dudes don't go home. They do leave because the guy has a sword. They go outside, they call the police, and then the guy with the sword just walks up and just hits the bully on the back of the head so hard, nearly decapitates him. Basically just like a barbarian killing blow. And then he leaves. He runs away. So, actually, no, before they call the cops, and he runs away. And before the cops get there, he comes back to the factory, sits down, and as the cops are pulling up, he's drinking a beer and smoking a cigarette. And it's weird, because at any point they could have said, "Stop building a sword." But they didn't. They probably just thought he was kind of a harmless guy. You know, the article is quite vague, because I had to find a newer version of the article that I could link to. It's such an old event. But they don't really say what he was being bullied. He was being bullied because they're like, "I bet you can't make a sword, loser." And he's like, "Oh, I'll show you." But yeah, nuts, dude. I can't imagine any workplace now somebody making a weapon and it going unnoticed. Unless it was like the cool guy that no one messed with. Like, he's so cool, he can make all the swords he wants. But for the most part, I think in workplaces today, if you walked around making gun noises with your fingers, you'd probably get dragged into HR, let alone making a 3-foot-long sword. It probably wasn't 3 feet long, but anyways, it was a long sword. And took place 2 days before Halloween. Actually, you know, maybe they thought he was making it for a Halloween costume. Still, they want to let you do that today. Okay, that's that story. So let's go ahead and talk about some creepy things that happened to me involving ghosts. And it's something that was very disconcerting. There was 2 particular events because it changed the way I looked at paranormal threats. And it's always kind of colored my attitude towards the paranormal and personal safety. So the first story, a little bit of background. Now, I know I have a lot of listeners around the world. We only have like 60% of our listenership is in the United States. The rest of it is global. But in America, in most major cities, people have seen these, and so I have to explain this real quick. What happens is you'll see places of business, you'll see real estate companies or burger shops or whatever, and there will be a dancing guy on a street corner with a sign. They dance around and they spin the sign around and they kind of do crazy tricks, and the sign says, you know, like, eat at Mr. Pickle's restaurant shop, or buy your home at Honey and Vinegar Real Estate, whatever it is.